Welcome to the Crazy for Cult show, and tonight it's Crazy for MooNiE. So, let's get right into it. This is uncensored, unscripted, and slightly unhinged. I'm Vanessa Cozini, as you can see, my little name, although to me it looks like Czechoslovakian because it's backwards. And this is MooNiE, also known as Phil, but most people call you MooNiE at the fair. I want to know, do people just go up to you and go, Phil?
Usually not. Usually it's Mooney or or something the equivalent. Yeah.
Or do people come up to you randomly and just start singing la 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 la?
Yes, that's probably the most common sort of reference. That and the whistles.
The whistle is amazing. For those who haven't seen the show, bad. Go see it. It's amazing, and the way you whistle, I swear, it's like we hear the words that you're trying to convey. It's a. I've always wondered how you do that.
Well, it's all in sort of context with the action. So the brain perceives it, I think. I mean, I haven't had anybody study it or I haven't talked psychologically, but you know, I've seen psychological studies where you eliminate certain letters from written words and our brain fills it in. So I imagine it's similar to that. I like to think that I'm sort of turkey baster injecting the words into your brain. And I think that's kind of where the sort of magical element comes, like, wait a minute, how did that word get in my head? Because that wasn't a word and yet it's a word. And how did he do that?
Yeah, that was the very first Ren Fair I went to. Me and my dad sat down at your show because my dad's got a bad back, so we always end up sitting somewhere. And we were just mesmerized. It was just the most amazing thing. I think it's my favorite thing about fair.
Oh, well, thank you. It's one of my favorite things too. But I have to be there.
So how long have you been doing Renaissance fairs?
I started doing Renaissance fairs when I was 17 and I'm 51. So I haven't done the math this year and I'm at the age now where I forget every year how many years it's been. So 34 or 35, but age 17 to age 51. So whatever, somebody else, get your calculator out.
Yeah, nerds, math. This is a nerd show.
Yeah.
So in all of those years, how many different fairs have you been to?
I haven't kept track of that, but I would say 20 or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. The thing about Renaissance fairs is you tend to do the same ones. So the one I'm doing right now, it is July of 2015. Um, it is my 26th year performing as MooNiE at that show, but it also is where I started out as a 17-year-old, between my junior and senior year of high school, uh, with actually Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine. We both started out together and drove up every day in the morning, in the afternoon. We would always carpool for the first 4 or 5 years. We always did it together all through college, and so, you tend to do the same ones over and over and over again. And the one in Southern California, I think I've been there 19 years now. So it's not about the number of fairs for me. It's about the number of years. And I've been doing it every year for, my show for 26 years, at least part of it.
That's amazing. So how did you get into it? I mean, what made you get up one morning and go, I want to be MooNiE?
Mm. Well, I have a degree. I have a BS in theater. I think it's the only appropriate degree in theater. And I graduated after, and I didn't have any way of making money other than just getting some sort of a job. And so I'd been doing Renaissance fairs for a number of years, and I just went on the road to do. I used to do another show called the Mud Show, and then one of the entertainment directors of one of the fairs, his name's John Mills. He's sort of a legend in the business, and he said I'd have my own show. He said I should have my own show. I said I don't have a show, and he said that's all right. I'll pay you this much to go out and learn. So a few workshops here and a lot of failure there, and over time. But it was really just a means to an end, really, of like being able to make money, to make a living, and not have to do anything other than performing it. I really didn't figure that it would become the success that it did. That was never the goal. I'm an actor first, and that's my first love, and I still do that all the time. I have two careers that go side by side, and so it's a constant balance and negotiation between what jobs I take, even still now, all the time, whether I'm going to do theater or film or television, or I'm going to do a Renaissance fair.
That's incredible. I mean, what everybody wants to do is, live their dream. I fortunately have a day job. Oh, pity me. But, I get to do this, after work, and but you get to live the fair. Would it be safe to say you kind of live, you know, a fair life because you are going from fair to fair throughout the year?
Oh, I think that there are many people that do. I think I'm one of the very sort of great minority of people out there who have a sort of a different existence. A lot of people will go from fair to fair and they live in that fair. I don't do that because I've got kids and I have an acting career. So I never went there except for one time in all of those 33 years of 34 whatever years of doing Renaissance fairs. I never, I've hardly ever stayed there. Early in my career, before I was doing MooNiE, I went on the road a few times, and stayed in New England, and then one time in Colorado. But as MooNiE, I've never gone and lived there. And most people go, and if it's a 7-week fair, they move there for 7 weeks. They've usually got either a place that they've got to stay, a friend, or they bring their house with them. But I have never ever done that. I fly in and I fly out, and it is a weekend job for me. So I don't live the fair life at all. But on a fair day, I live that fair day in a way that is, well, I mean, very similar to what other people do at the Renaissance Fair. And it is a special and unique and wonderful day, that day, and each day is. Yeah.
Yeah, each day at the fair feels like a different vibe somehow. I've always found that interesting. If you had to pick a favorite fair, if somebody said you absolutely have to pick out of all the fairs you've been to your favorite fair, which do you think it would be?
Well, that's an easy answer, and it won't necessarily be a popular one, but it isn't necessarily because it's a better fair. But my absolute favorite fair to do is the Bristol Renaissance Fair, and it's really kind of more of a circumstantial uh, consideration that I I live a half an hour away from the fair. So all I have to do is get up and drive to work like a normal person. Whereas the Southern California Renaissance Pleasure Fair it happens to be in Los Angeles. And much as I love my fair friends out there and love doing that fair, I have to fly there on Friday and I have to fly there on Monday. That's a 12-hour experience each day. So I get that extra 11 and a half hours. And let me tell you, flying every single week is no joy. You are, bored a lot of the time it's the same line over and over again. Wait in line for the train, wait on the train, get off the train, wait in the line for the security, get in security, wait at the gate. And I have to be 2 hours in advance, otherwise I start getting nervous. So I'd rather not be nervous. So I just got to get there early. So, but and then you get there, and then you got to go get your rental car, and then you got to drive where you're going. And in Los Angeles, you arrive at 6 o'clock. You're from LAX to where I'm going in Echo Park. That's an hour of a drive there. So it's my favorite is Bristol. It also happens to be a beautiful fair. It's permanent. They have three-story buildings. The gardens are absolutely gorgeous. They put a lot of time and effort into that site. There's lakes, there's old growth oak trees. It's in a forest. My stage is gigantic and beautiful and new and permanent. And I've been there for 26 years. So I walk out on stage and I've got a full house and they start clapping. So what's not to love, you know?
So it feels more like home and in many ways.
It is home. It is the first fair that I started at, and it's the first place that I saw somebody performing and doing what I do similarly. And I was like, oh man, this looks like fun. And now I'm on that stage, and I've been there for I don't know 15 years. So it's a good deal for me, and I'm quite happy. And the owners of that fair are very good to me, and I'm we like each other.
Is it hard sometimes being MooNiE and trying to go to the fair as Phil with your kids?
I don't do that too much. My kids lead a sort of a normal life. They're not fair kids at all. They come to the fair once a year. Well, my kids are getting older now. My second boy, he likes to come, but even he's 14 now and he's starting to like it a little less. My daughter's, she's almost 9 and she'll go through a phase now where she'll want to start coming more, but really she only comes once a year with her mom. And so they don't live that life at all. We live a very different life. I lead much more of an actor life than I do a Renaissance Fair performer life. It's odd, but that I would be me in the Renaissance Fair community, and yet I'm not immersed in it at all.
Hmm. So between acting and fair and all these things, how do you juggle family? I mean, how do you keep the balance?
Well, it's difficult, and you miss time. I think last year I did much more theater because I was making a choice to do that. I had some really awesome projects to working with some great artists, and it was the right choice. The show that I stayed back instead of going to Los Angeles, I stayed back for won the award, the big award in the city for the best production of the year out of all the big theaters. And this was in a great theater, but it was only a 550 seat theater, but it was a special experience. Um, so my sorry, I guess I lost track of what was the question again.
The balance of family and acting.
Oh, family. Right, right. So, before last year, I was on the road a lot, like maybe about 100 days a year. So I'm just gone for almost a third of that time. But then when I'm home, I'm home. But now that when you're doing theater, you're gone every day and you're gone for 8 hours because it's equity theater. So you're rehearsing 8 hours a day and you're working 6 days a week. So you're home every day, but you're gone more days and more hours overall. But that's all my kids have ever known. I'm an entertainer and I leave and I come back. So that's what it is. Always has been.
I have to imagine their childhood was quite entertaining with you for a dad, just doing the different things that I've seen you do. Do you do those for your kids? When they were really little, growing up.
They're not so interested in any of that stuff. It's sort of like, like I remember, I mean, not to put myself on this level at all. I don't think, but like I remember there was a time where I think it was Michael Jordan's kid. His favorite player was Walter Payton or somebody else, So like I'm just dad, They don't they weren't so interested in all that. But what you know to be MooNiE is to be a little odd, like he little unhinged, like you say at the beginning. So I'm slightly unhinged. That's definitely true. And so I try to pass that on to my kids. I want them to be slightly unhinged. And so I do that in the way that I mess with them, and tease them, and not tease them's not the right word, but I'm sarcastic, and I'm facetious, and I tell them, like I tell my daughter, we've always told her the most important thing. My daughter's a beautiful little girl, and we always told her, the most important thing is to be nice. And we're so proud of you that you're a very nice person, and you're smart, and you're talented, and now I've switched it, and now I tell her, I say, oh, Sadie, you're so beautiful. Now that's the most important thing, isn't it? It's the most important thing, being beautiful. She's like, no, it is not, Dad. So like I'm constantly switching stuff up and messing with them, so keep them on their toes. And I think that helps develop a sense of humor, so that they have to think for themselves, because I don't always tell them the truth. I tell them stuff that I want them to be thinking and listening, instead of just swallowing it, to go, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. So they always have to watch it with me, because I won't always tell them the truth. But it's outlandish, I'm going out there, so I'm a little unhinged, and I hope they are too.
I have a great deal of respect for that. I was raised by pretty much my dad, and he's a grown up kid, and I kind of learned you don't ever have to really grow up if you don't want to. I mean, you have to, be an adult and have responsibilities, but you don't have to be, one of the normals in society. You get to have
Mhm.
fun, and I think
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think they will. I don't think they could be with me, and my wife as parents.
that's fantastic. So I want to know, is there something that you geek out about? I mean, obviously you could see some of my different art in the background of I've got some different comic book stuff, and I've been known as a comic book and movie kind of geek of sorts. Is there something that you geek out over?
Yeah, but it's not really interesting. It's it it's specialized. Like I went to St. Louis, and um everywhere I travel, I try to find a used bookstore. It's one of my loves. And if I were to go back to school, I would probably get a degree and a PhD in theater history. So I'm constantly going to the used bookstores to find these old, out of date books that are telling me about time in the theater, that you have to go to these special books. So like my particular interest these days is 19th century theater, because we weren't really taught about it a lot, and it's a sort of a lost chapter in American theatrical history, because we've sort of written it off. And some of those shows are the minstrel shows, which are completely on PC, but they were the most popular form of theater for a long time. And I'm talking about popular entertainment. I'm not talking about legit theater, but legit theater. In the 1860s, 1870s, there was a lot of melodrama, and a lot of this like very topical theatrical fare that was written not to last forever, but to entertain in the moment. Something you might see at, say, the Annoyance Theater in Chicago. So, but it was very popular. It just wasn't meant to last. But the environment in which that sort of aesthetic flourished is of particular interest to me now. But actor biographies from the 16th, 17th, 18th century are traditionally, so I geek out about that stuff. But yeah, it's so nerdy and so like specialized. I can't imagine anybody else be interested.
You would be surprised. I mean, I think I've written 18 different analogies, or what have you, essays on the yellow wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I'm
And what is that? What is that? I don't know what that is.
It's about a woman who goes insane. It's a tale about a woman who her husband's a doctor, which don't ever get advice from your husband if he's a doctor.
Okay.
But they didn't know about postpartum depression back then, and she was going through it, and it's kind of the unraveling of her mind told by her as she's describing this room with this gaudy yellow wallpaper. And it's interesting how more detailed the paper gets as she gets more insane.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's a tale of insanity. It's a tale of not understanding, and it's also a tale of gender norms of that time. I do love period pieces and looking into different time periods and how life was then. How people in different classes survived.
Yeah, I love, that's what I love to do. I love to see how actors lived and thrived or lack thereof in different time periods. But I also like to put it in perspective for how acting style changed throughout the centuries. And then you're only talking about the Anglo, like English and American. That's really all I really know about it. But I mean, that's not even to mention the French or the Swedish or the Russians, which I know a little bit about. But there's different acting styles, and to know how they move from one to the other throughout time, and how the different mediums and the way the different technologies of lighting especially influence the way acting styles change. That's mainly my main interest in learning about actor biographies in the past, was to learn about acting in different time periods.
So kind of like not anthropology, I want to say, of acting
Yeah,
evolves and whatnot. I love
exactly.
I love that kind of stuff. It's insane to see how anything evolves in any way, shape, or form. And that's why I think I've always called this show Crazy for Cult, because cult it's obscure. It's whatever little thing you have that makes you go insane, go crazy over, that you love. And I think everybody has something very obscure or very different that they're into. Nowadays some of that might be mainstream, but it doesn't mean it's still not cult. So it's interesting to know that you're really into like the anthropology of theater and how it's grown over the years. What do you think of the future of theater?
Well, we're in a period right now, unfortunately, I hope it ends, but I think we're in a period of transition where a lot of theater is nothing really happens. So it's just this sort of meditation on existence. So it's sort of this sort of existential plotting of life that is being depicted on stage right now, that is all the rage. But very little of it has edge, or has teeth to it. And so you're supposed to live in this world that these playwrights are creating, that you're either, wow, nothing is happening and I'm just going to live with you, or something bizarre is happening, but it's not really plot driven. So it's not my favorite. Like I'm a fan of a good old plot and something happening and a rising action and a climax and a denouement. And I mean, I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for that. So I think though that we have to move, as in the theater, we have to move into a more abstract world because it resonates poetically with an audience better than film, I think, does. So I was talking with another actor recently, and she brought up something that I think resonates in theater. She was talking about me and the MooNiE and Brune show, and but in the context of something that I did in the MooNiE and Brune show, I'm starting to do storytelling and telling a memoir type stories, like a la The Moth, Radio Hour, and she said that in the theater, she was saying, I thought theater was dead, but it's not. She said, in watching you, I realized that the theater isn't dead, because by watching live theater, by watching someone perform and create another world live in front of them, theater teaches us compassion, and it teaches us empathy, and we don't have to have that in a film. We can sit back and we can be at a distance and judge. We can get up and go get a sandwich, and it doesn't have anything. But live performance is engaged, it is connected, it is the essence of that live performance, if it's a good one. If it's not, then it's a failing, it's a failing evening of theater. So I think that for theater will survive because of that very thing, because of our um, innate need for compassion and connection and empathy, which is very hard to find, on the computer, in television, on a film.
Yeah, we kind of live in an apathy-driven society with, the millennials and Generation Me and Generation I and all of that.
Mhm.
Once we get past that, I have a lot of hope for, the next generation. I see my nieces and nephews, and they're very much into art, and they're very much into uh, just anything that's creative, and I see that passion coming back in the new generations that I see now, and it gives me hope because I thought it was dying off when I saw, the people a little bit younger than me when I was, in my early 20s. And I was so afraid that, this was going to die out, that, creativity itself was going to kind of get stunted. But I think it's making a very strong comeback in a lot of different ways. And theater itself, it's transcending how, you know, I knew it when I was younger, to my nieces saying, I want to go see this play, I want to go see that play. And I don't remember, really people talking about that a lot when I was younger. So I think there was a bit of a revival somewhere in there that I just I just kind of missed, but I'm really happy to go to them now. Um, Luckily for me, I have a friend who goes and reviews a lot of these, and he'll get me a ticket, and we'll go along, and we'll end up talking in the car for like 3 hours after seeing Sweeney Todd, trying to dissect the mind of the madman.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that live performance still very much appeals to young people, and maybe and I'm speaking of mostly the Renaissance Fair, because I have many Facebook friends, many, and that's really, my Facebook is not really a personal page. It's really more of a way to connect with people that I meet through performing. And I have as many or more people who are young that are Facebook friends, and people that come. I constantly have young people come up and tell me how much they love the show, and it's not old people. It's very much a a wide range. It's everyone from there's no age range. There it is every single age range for me that people are coming up. So I can only take that as evidence that there are many young people out there who do have interest in it.
When you put the MooNiE show together, were you ever thinking of a demographic, or did you just throw those social norms out the window? Because I feel when I watch your show that there's no age group that you're trying to hit.
Correct. I Again, it goes back to it's a bit of self-preservation, but very early on, all the decisions that I made were decisions to be inclusive. I said, "Oh, I could do this, but no, that will irritate that person, or oh, that will irritate that group or that group." And no, so and like you do a trick with a baseball cap. I love the Chicago Cubs. I always will, in spite of our pathetic track record. I am a Cubs fan till I die, but I can't use a Cubs fan in my baseball thing because then I alienate everybody else. And people have very strong allegiances. So I use a white hat, a plain white hat, symbolic of surrender and availability, and everyone's welcome. I didn't want to use a lot of blue humor because people who are older are generally going to be they're more likely to be offended, and it's not appropriate for little kids. So I that sort of put that out. So I wanted everyone to be included, but I can be very aggressive. I can be very irritating. I can make people. I consider myself the king of discomfort. I am absolutely 100% ready and willing to go into uncomfortability at any moment if that's what it is the right move for that moment. I don't want it, but if that's what I have to do, then that's what I'll do. And if that means I have to irritate every single person at that stage, at that show, and so that they all have to get up and leave and just say, "Screw you, MooNiE, you're such a son of a bitch, we're out," I'm like, that's fine, because I'd much rather have those people walk away going, "Gosh darn it, that MooNiE, he's an a-hole," and make it and let that sit with them for a few days, than have people walk away and go, "Hey, that guy was okay." I'm going in. I am going in physically, mentally, and emotionally. And if you're not comfortable with that, that's okay. No one stapled your butt to the seat, and you are able to get up and go anywhere you want to go.
I have seen you get people back into the audience, though. That's the neatest trick I've ever seen. Is how you will see somebody who's leaving near the beginning of a show, and you like go and take their glasses or their hat or whatnot. And I can't remember if there was one time I think you like wrapped something around this guy to the seat. It was the funniest thing.
Yeah, it was duct tape. Yeah, I'll duct tape a guy down. But those situations, that's we're still in happy comedy mode.
Mhm.
And usually I'm not chasing people down. It's occasionally if it's funny and I'll do it, but that's not so common. What I will do is I will go out into the street, or I'll go into the back and I'll grab somebody's glasses and I will take them to an empty spot and I'll put their glasses at the location where their eyes would be if they were sitting there, and they get the hint and they come and sit down. So I, all of that is those are bits. That's just Lotsy for the show. It is, of course, part of the agenda. The agenda is to fill my audience and to get everyone to sit down and have a good time. But if something isn't going right, if something is happening in the course of the show that is not in line with what we are looking for as a group, and I'm the one that has to make that call because I've been here before and I know where we're trying to get to. If something occurs in that, and we have to come to an understanding, then we will come to an understanding. And sometimes it's not comfortable. But I had a lady, I was this last weekend, it was uncomfortable. I was having my first three shows were killer. I mean, just monster, huge, great. It was like butter. It was like putting butter on an English muffin. What happens to the butter? It melts. That's what it was. It was like I come on out, they start laughing, and I do the next thing, and they laugh. It was like butter in a muffin. It was good. And then the next show, I come out and I start doing the very same thing, and I got one lady over on the other side, like, "Come on, MooNiE, hurry up! Come on, MooNiE, hurry up! Let's go!" Now, she doesn't realize how unhelpful that is. She's just trying, and I talked to her later. She came up and talked to me, saying she was just trying to play. And I'm like, well, I can't really use that because you are trying to take control of the environment, which is you're dictating the rhythm and the pace of a show that isn't yours. So I just sort of looked at her, and then she comes at me with a bazooka. She mimes a bazooka on her shoulder and just looks at me and doesn't do anything. And like I got nothing. She just wants to play, but everything she does is a challenge, right? And it's right at the beginning of the show, and I'm like, I gotta get going. I got stuff to do. The very first thing out of the gate. So I walked over to her and just face to face, and I just looked at her and I said, "We need to come to an understanding right now." And that's all I said. And I turned around and she shut up for the rest of the thing, but I could tell she was sad because she just wanted to play. And I'm like, I don't, first, you're not giving me anything I can work with. You're hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Like, what? It's not your show. They, if one person is saying, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, that is reflecting maybe a few other people who are thinking, what's he doing? What's he doing? And I need them to go into me with their what's he doing. That curiosity is very beneficial. But if that curiosity turns into impatience and anxiety, then I no longer can use that. Now I have to overcome that and work a little harder. So I can't let her dictate the thoughts and the feelings of the rest of the audience. So I had to shut her down just because I couldn't. She wasn't giving me anything I could work with.
Now, on the opposite side, I've seen you work with sign language interpreters in the most interesting way in the MooNiE and Brune show.
Yeah.
Now, were they always there, or was that a new thing that came out, some years ago where they had, interpreters for every show?
It's become standard to have sign language interpreters at Southern Fair. It's not at Bristol. It it just is fair to fair. But it just so happens that the sign language interpreter group or guild is really active and really strong at Southern California Renaissance Fair. But it's the only one that it is strong at. Maybe the Northern California Fair has a presence, but not to the degree of the Southern. So they always have them there. They've always got them there, and it's not about whether we request it or not. It's just it's there. So over time, we're unhinged, so we mess with them, and over time that just becomes also a standard bit, and they all want to come and play. They all want to interpret our show because they know they're going to have to work hard. So not only do they want to be there, but they send the students, the young people who are learning, to that show to watch the interpreters trial by fire interpret our show because nobody knows what we're going to say, and it's going to be nonsense. A lot of it's going to be nonsense, and some of the time it's going to be on purpose to watch them have to work it. So it just evolved. No one asked for it. It's just one of those fun things that just happened.
Yeah, I think watching you and Brune go back and forth, and then the interpreters go back and forth, it's just, you bring them into the show in such a unique way that I would have never, would have expected. And from what I understand, you and Brune were separate and came together. Now, did you guys come together at the Bristol Fair, or did you guys come together when you met at the Southern California Renaissance Fair?
No, well, we didn't. It wasn't at Southern. He came to Southern quite a bit later than I did. No, we met initially at the Bristol Renaissance Festival, but we didn't start performing together. And that's where we kind of got to be friends, was at Bristol. But in no more way than a lot of other performers become friends, where it's a sort of a tradition, like, folks hang out with like kinds. So, after a show, after the fair day, a lot of times, a lot of the variety performers will go out to dinner together. Because we'll trade war stories and kibitz and, one-upsmanship and, pick on each other, just like you do, anybody in their line of work would do. And so that's all I knew him, really, just hanging out like that. But then he got hired at the Northern California Renaissance Festival, where I already was as well. And he asked me to come on stage with him in the last day of the show, the last show of the day, because he wasn't allowed to pass the hat, meaning ask for tips at that show, because they gave him a good contract, and he that was part of it. They bought out his hat at the last show of the day, so he's like, he didn't have anything to lose, so he just asked me to come on stage, and that's where our show evolved from. And within a year, one season, it became so popular that you could not get a seat unless you came to the show before it. There was no space for more humans. It was really quite a phenomenon back then. It was a great deal of fun.
How do you feel that the fair has evolved over the years since you started?
Well, in a sense, it hasn't, but I think it's gotten better at communicating. I think it also has gotten better at presenting itself as a professional environment rather than this sort of nerdy, geeky subculture that um, caters to misfits and dorks. Um, I think it still caters to misfits and dorks, but I think that Mr. and Mrs. Jones have now been invited to the party as well. And I think that they're starting to come and go, oh, this is actually, oh, I didn't realize it was quite so fun. I hear that all the time, like, oh, I've heard about it, but I never came. But now I get it. Like, oh, wow, look at this. This is crazy how fun it is. Oh, look at this. I didn't realize. Like, oh my gosh, I hear that a lot. I hear that all the time. And I think for me, I think it's crazy, but how little things are big. But in the advertising, we're now like, Walgreens is a sponsor. So our little placard, our little cardboard stand, poster stand is on the counter of every Walgreens in Chicago and Los Angeles and New York. It's just sitting there. So as you go and buy your gum and pharmacy needs, there's the Renaissance Fair sitting right there. It's like, oh, and I figure it's like, if it's good for Walgreens, it's got to be good for me. I mean, everybody goes to Walgreens, for crying out loud, right? Or CVS, same thing. Like, so I think it's a legitimizer. So I think the fair has evolved into a more savvy business as far as a market, from a marketing standpoint. I don't think from the inside, I don't think it's changed all that much. I think it's a little sleeker. It's a little more professional. It's the show. There's more oversight on the product that is being put forward. But in essence, I don't think it's changed too much.
So I suppose the last question of the night, um, as we go into the twilight hours, is where does MooNiE see MooNiE in 5 years? Are you seeing any change whatsoever? Or are you just absolutely in love with your life and that's what you are and that's what you want to be forever?
Gosh, that's a great question. I mean, that's exactly what I'm grappling with right now. And I I never would want to give it up, but I'm 51. I've been doing it for 26 years, and my show is very physical. It, I'm an athlete in my job, and I'm 51. I've had spinal fusion surgery on my neck. I've had, and I'm fine. That was 3 years ago, and I've had a torn meniscus, and that was 5 years ago, and that was fine. That's fine, you know. So they keep stapling me together and throwing me back out into the scrum, but I don't. I see a diminishing amount of time. My first love is theater, and I would have done Renaissance fairs less, but I had to make money. I have kids, so that's why I started doing more and more. And but I also it also was also sort of a circumstance of my life. One of my oldest daughter died of leukemia when she was 5, and that was back in 2002. And I quit acting for about 3 years because it just doesn't pay as well, and it takes a lot of emotional fortitude to compete in that business. And I had 2 little kids. I had 2 boys, little boys, and a grieving wife. And I just quit acting for a while to focus. And in that time when I couldn't act, I was like, well, at least let me just get really good at this and just really focus on this. And I and I did, and I still do. I still try to get better every time. Every single solitary show, I never, ever, ever, ever take time off or phone it in. It matters to me every single time. But I want to care about acting now, now that I can, now that I'm in a position to do that. And that's my first love. That's why I went to study, and I see myself doing that more, and Renaissance fairs left. So folks, enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, I will be putting all of your links in the comments section, and I encourage everybody to see you in any facet you're in. You're a magical and amazing person to watch. You're just enthralling. There's something about you that tells, people, hey, you got to sit down and watch this because it's going to be something great. So everybody, please see MooNiE, see Phil, see him do whatever he's doing because it's going to be magical. And thank you
Thank
very much for being my sacrificial, I mean, my first guest.
it was awesome. It was just like talking to a friend. Thank you.
Thank you, and keep keep doing what you're doing. I'll see you at the next run fair.
You too. Take care now.
Bye.
Bye.